Welcome back to Classic Mix Up, episode, I think, 18. Is that right? All right. Episode 18. We're back. Classic Mix Up podcast. I'm Rosario.
And I'm Riley. Welcome back, everybody.
We have a good episode for you today, folks. So I think we're both excited to be here. It's been a little while. We had a little break we had a little Classic Mix Up spring break, but we're back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm actually on spring break this week.
I just finished mine. So
so it's kind of a nice little. I guess this is the spring break episode, but we took a spring break.
We took a spring break.
Yeah,
we didn't do an episode last week, but
no.
But here we are. So yeah, you been enjoying your spring break so far? I guess it kind of just started, but
yeah, no, I mean, I guess, like, would you count like Friday my spring break? I wouldn't count Friday as my spring break, like, because I still had school the day before.
Right.
So, I mean, I would count today as my first day.
Today is your first day, I think. Yeah.
And I drove my girlfriend down to Detroit, and because her family wouldn't drive her, and then I went to Guitar Center and impulse bought a 12-string guitar.
That is sick.
No regrets.
I saw a sneak peek of it already.
Yeah,
I'll show the pod. Yeah, show the pod.
Probably YouTube while I'm grabbing it. Well, so on YouTube,
he goes. I go. You need to play something for the people. And he goes, I don't know how to play it yet, and just like played an entire Black Keys song. I'm like, it sounds like you know how to play it.
No, I did not. But if you guys can hear it, oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Sounding good, man.
It's amazing. It's so fun. It's so different. If if any of you guys out there are guitar players and you've never played a 12-string or play a 12-string, it's so different. Like it's different in a way of the sound is so big, and it has layers, and it sounds like you have several people playing the same notes. So you could play like an E chord, but because it has like the layered strings, it sounds like someone else is playing in like a different, like the same E chord but up the frets, so like a higher octave of an E chord. So it's like kind of cool.
That's awesome.
But it's hard to push down the strings because you have two strings right next to each other. So my fingers are fucked up. Like it's like
okay, something to get used to then.
Oh, dude, yeah, it was awesome. But I was like went into Guitar Center today, and initially, like, I thought my car broke down, so I was like driving on the highway, and I couldn't get above 50.
Oh no!
And I was like, oh shit! And I
be a bad time for that.
I called my mom, and I was like, hey, I'm fucked. Like, I'm in Detroit. Like, I literally am like, I'm in McNichols. Like, shout out to Boldy, but like,
shout out to Boldy.
I'm literally the nearest exit is McNichols, and I really don't want to have to pull off onto McNichols and sit.
You probably don't want to do that, yeah.
No. So so I like called, and I got off on the exit, and like I was like turning back onto the highway to go back to my girlfriend's school, and I realized that I had in low gear. So you know how it's like drive and then L?
Yeah.
Had it in low. So it was I was just like, thank fucking God.
Damn. So what you're saying is if your car didn't break down yet, it's probably going to from driving on the highway in low for an hour.
Oh no, it was thank God it was only like 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
Because like in like where I was I didn't drive it all the way downtown on low. I was driving back home. I was driving to Guitar Center.
So you had just started.
Yeah, I was. And like the side streets are like 25, 30. Like,
right. Right, so it was fine. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you realized that.
And then I got on the highway and I couldn't get above 50. It just wasn't shifting. And I was like, oh, fuck, not now, dude. This is a new car. Like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And, yeah, dude, that was a crazy little story. But thank God that it wasn't broken because I went to Guitar Center and, I was playing a guitar. I was going to get an electric, a new Tele or something like that, a Telecaster. Then I was like, nah, nothing's really working. Then I almost bought an amp that was used. I was like, I don't know. And then I go into the acoustics and
it was calling your name.
Well, this like almost like godly, like it was like kind of like an angel,
divine force.
Yeah, this divine figure of a man. No, he was a dude sitting in the acoustic room at Guitar Center, and he was jamming out on this 12-string, like pitch. He was doing like pitch harmonics and like he was doing like crazy shit. and he has a little like newsy hat on, and he's just sitting
Mm-hmm.
there playing. And I'm looking, I play a banjo or something. I'm like playing acoustics, and then he's right in front of the 12 strings though, playing a 12 string. So I'm waiting, and he gets up, and I walk over there because he's out of the way now. And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you looking to buy a 12 string?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't have one. I was looking to buy one. I've always wanted one." And he's like, "They're beautiful guitars." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you probably heard me playing." I'm like, "Yeah, that was beautiful. Just, I'm like, that you convinced me to get this 12
That's
string."
amazing. I
Yeah,
love that
buddy.
story, actually.
And then he's like, "God bless." And I was like, "Thank you, man."
Nice. Nice.
A divine figure, if you will. And I was like,
Yeah, sweet. I guess to kind of segue, we have some good guitar riffs to talk about in the album
"Yeah,
for today. The first
sweet.
one, I think at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that was a good introduction.
Mhm.
So we'll kind of moving forward, if you're new around here, how we kind of do it is we talk about two main albums for the week. We may go off on many tangents, but usually we have two albums that we talk about, one that I picked and one that Riley picked. So we're going to start off today with one that I picked, which is going to be Keep It Like a Secret by Built to Spill, which is a 1999 rock slash pop kind of indie rock record.
Mhm.
And one that I've really been enjoying like lately. I know you've been listening to this one for a while, but from the sounds of it, but for me, I found it pretty recently, I'd say, maybe in the past few months. And it
Mhm.
was somewhat of an impulse decision for me to pick this album because it's not really one of my all-time favorites or anything, but in the past couple of weeks especially, I've been really into it and I listened to it a couple times. So like last week when I was at your house and you were saying how you liked it, I'm like, oh, like we should talk about it then because
Yeah.
I've been super into it. So yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I've heard this album. I love a couple songs already on this album, but I never listened to it all the way through. Like an
Okay. It's a
actual
great listen for listening all the way
Oh, it was
through.
great. And it was fun. Like I was like, because of the song, like I love the song Carry the Zero. And then I
Me
love,
too.
so I knew those songs before, but then I like listened to the album after, like, for the pod, and
Mm-hmm.
um, it was great. It was so fun, and the lyrics were so like not, some songs were had good like depth to them, like you could kind of look into like the meaning of like Carry the Zero and all that kind of stuff. But then
Sure.
some songs were just really fun and like kind of like nonsensical in a way.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think I agree with that. I think one thing that I like about this album is like the pop elements, if you will, which are kind of more of the nonsensical, as you described, songs, which are kind of
Yeah.
just like not the songs don't really have a direction, but it's a really they usually have a really fun, catchy chorus. I think a
Mhm.
lot of songs on this album are like incredibly catchy and have gotten stuck in my head a lot, which is one reason why I've listened to it so much. But it's always, I think, a good sign when a bunch of tracks from an album can get stuck in your head and you can like just throw on the whole album and listen to it all the way through, and there's not really any dull
Yeah,
spots. So yeah,
I agree.
one thing we were talking about right before we started the podcast, we were kind of going over some things we were going to talk about, and we both agreed that the album flows together greatly, which I guess shouldn't be a huge ask, but it you can just consistently throw it on and listen
Mhm.
to it front to back. It's easy for me to do that, and that's why, like I said, it's been one of my favorites recently. And every song on the album is pretty good and plays, I think, an important part to the flow of the album. So there's not really any songs that I would skip, which is kind of why it's been one of my go-tos.
Yeah, no, I did not expect this to go so well, like as like a listen, because I don't know, like I feel like when we've kind of gone into like listening to an album that we think is going to be like a good like full album or whatever,
Right,
it
and
always
there's
ends
some
up sounding the same. Like every song sounds the same, sounds kind of boring, almost
yeah, we've
like,
had that experience before.
but for some reason, this album didn't do that to me. I think because it was so upbeat in the guitar riffs, and it kind of added just enough variety to where like it it kept me like entertained. Like I had it on in the
Totally.
background while I was doing stuff today too. Um and it was great. And I noticed little riffs that I was like, oh, this is great. Or this song or another song. I kept adding songs as I listened to it. And it was just good. Like I think I loved the last song, which is I think Broken
Broken
Chairs. It's
Chairs,
8
yeah.
minutes, and I didn't realize. I thought I was like, "Whoa, is this a new song?" Like halfway through, and it was still Broken Chairs. I was
Yeah,
like,
it's a bit of a
"Oh,
there's a bit of like
outro."
pace change, yeah.
But I'm not a big long song person. Um, but yeah, if there's a good long song, I'll listen
Yeah,
to it.
but it's pretty. I mean, like kind of the theme we've been talking about. It's pretty seamless. It doesn't feel like a drag to listen to Broken
Oh,
Chairs specifically. So yeah, and
yeah.
I agree with you that I think like the melodies and the guitar riffs are really cool, but they're mostly simple. Not like anything overly complicated. It just mostly is kind of the standard catchy pop rock of the time, but it
Mm,
still, I think, has a quality that makes it stand out as like a much more like it's just much more infectious to me
mm,
than an average rock album, you know. And I think that was interesting that when I was looking up like what genres you could call this album, because I know it's obviously, you know, indie rock, but I was looking at other descriptors, and something did call it dream pop, which I
mm,
think I wouldn't have got that from it myself, but I'm glad I did a little research, because I would definitely say it has a dream pop like quality where it's almost kind of like
yeah,
an ethereal kind of listen where it kind of hooks you in, and uh I don't know. It's kind of an intangible quality that just makes it feel like it's kind of more of a layered,
right.
kind of just lush sounding recording that
Yeah.
I think it really shines through on here.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think every time I like listen to this album or like the songs from this album, I I'm always surprised that it came out in 1999 because it is so modern indie sounding
Yeah, definitely.
today that you can tell it influenced so much. I don't even think directly. I think more indirectly, probably through like just pure sound
Just the
change
evolution.
at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and they were more ahead of their time. It was kind of like Bright Eyes and like when we
Right, which we talked about on the last
yeah
episode. Yeah.
when we talked about that Bright Eyes album. It was made in 2004 or whatever, and it was way ahead of its time. Now you hear music all like even
That sounds like that. Yeah.
it's all new music like that, like all the new like new wave folk music sounds like old Bright Eyes, but then this is kind of the same thing of like Built to Spill in 1999 sounds like a lot of the average like indie rock, and it's pretty cool. It's like you see like the precursors of the people that inspired the modern generations indirectly in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Built to Spill is a really hailed kind of like a cult favorite
Mm,
band, especially with their predecessor to this album, Perfect From Now On,
mm,
which you can also consider highly experimental and influential. So that's probably, I guess, what kind of inspired me to listen to this originally, is that I had seen many people talk about it. I see, you know, just when you look at influential albums or top albums, this is probably a pretty common one to see. And I think actually the way that I found it, or well, not the way that I found it, I guess, but what really got me to decide to listen to it is I was listening to some like band's radio, you know, like on Apple Music or Spotify,
yeah.
they'll have like whoever radio and they'll do songs like by that band that also related to them. One of the songs from this album came up on like someone else's radio, and I'm like, oh, that song's like amazing. I got to listen to this album, and I
That's
did
awesome.
it. And yeah, so that kind of, I guess, that goes to show how they are, you know, an older band, but their sound has aged well and was ahead
Yeah.
of its time. So yeah.
I actually, I found out about Built to Spill because their new album that came out last year,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Haven't heard, but
it has a song called "Gonna Lose" on it, and it was on like a new music release playlist
okay.
recommended for me on like Spotify or Apple Music, and I love that song so much, and I was like, "Oh, Built to Spill," and then I saved like the top couple songs, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Carry the Hero," which is I think their most popular song.
Yeah. That song's incredible. Yeah. So I'd say that's speaking of Carry the Zero, one of my favorites.
Mhm.
I think that is a good example of I described it as infectious, like the infectious guitar. It's like a simple, like repetition. You know, it's not anything crazy. There's actually some long solos between the verses on this song, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
But another thing is I guess the combination of the guitar riff with the kind of cool and relaxed style of the singer makes for a pretty, interesting track. It's a good combination, and that is definitely one of my favorite songs and one of their most popular for a reason. I think that could be one that everyone should check out.
Yeah, and I would say the another that song is amazing, but another song is The Plan. I mean, starts out the album.
Yeah, that's a great start to the album.
Yeah. And it like it's kind of weird because it sounds like it doesn't really like have a start, like because it kind of has like you kind of jump in, like almost like mid cut. It sounds like, and then you jump in right into the song, which is great. Like I love it.
Yeah, well, there's little like wasted time on this album, I would say.
Yeah, it was
everything
perfectly mixed to go together. You totally can hear it. And I think that's why it's really good and like kind of seamless. So
I agree. Yeah,
pretty genius.
Yeah, so I guess other than those two, I mean, there's plenty of other quality songs. We said, everything is kind of everything is pretty much a pretty good song. But another one of my favorites, I'd say, would be Else, which has like the coolest guitar riff ever. Just something about that little, I don't know. I could hear it, but it's hard to describe, but something about it is just super cool. It's simple yet effective. And that the whole instrumental for that song is actually really interesting. I don't know if it's if there's like a keyboard in there or something, but there's like a layered sound to it that is just really beautiful, and it's makes that one of my favorite songs. And then right after that, you have You Were Right, which stands out to me for, I guess, kind of a different reason. It's primarily for the writing / the vocals, because I think this song is one of the more catchier songs on the album and definitely tends to get stuck in my head. So I think the kind of the gravelly singing in his vocal delivery and the writing of it to make it have that really catchy chorus, it just meshes well and makes that one that's always stuck in my head and makes me always want to return to that song and the album as a whole, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking the words right out of my mouth, man. Like, I mean,
I like to hear that.
I don't have I loved like Temporary Blind too. Like, I mean, like I'm just going in order with you too, but
right,
it's the complete opposite of the last song before too, like lyrically, because it's more repetition and like kind of like whiny in a way. And then I love how the end of this album is one long song, because it's kind of like it lets like the guitar kind of talk in a way, and I love that. Like I love when
for sure
they let the music talk, and like for such a long song, lyrically it's not heavy. It's like literally like what, like maybe 16 lines of words, and like 16 sentences in 8 minutes, and it's like, well, it's not.
Yeah, and I think it's I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that could be one of the factors maybe that really does set this apart from an average indie rock or an average kind of pop rock album of the time, at least, because like we said, this is kind of more of a modern sound. But I think what could set it apart is that it has the use of the instrumentals. It has the long instrumental solos. It doesn't rely purely on just like poppy chorus writing and vocal delivery. It really does lean on the instrumentation. I think a good example of that specifically would be the song Sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like I said, long solos and really just like a varying kind of song structure to the typical pop albums of the time. So I think, the song or the album obviously has some tracks that are more kind of cookie cutter pop songs, like some of the ones we mentioned with the really catchy upbeat chorus and stuff like that. But it also has some like Sidewalk and Broken Chairs, which are mostly instrumental, a little more, you could say, I guess, experimental, kind of outside the box, which is, I think that's one of the reasons why I like it so much, is you have that good kind of combination of both sides of the spectrum, and it does both well. So
yeah, no, it's great, because I think too that the reason why like I connect this album to like modern indie is it's like, I guess like 2 reasons. So or 3. So it's basically the way the words are sang, so the way the guy sings it, the lead singer, and the way the guitar sounds, like not the riffs, but the, like the types of distortion, it's
Definitely.
very soft, like very like
That's
upbeat.
definitely a familiar like sound for
Um,
the modern indie rock.
yeah. And lyrical content. It's kind of this, some lyrics are like ambiguous, but not yet folky. Like, how like modern folk is very like, oh my God, if
Cryptic and
you realize, if you realize like 2 bars of a song, you're gonna be like, oh my God, that means
no,
this.
we've talked about that a ton, and we've also talked about how in indie rock it's not always, the lyrics aren't always something and the singer isn't always incredible, but
Right.
just the way it works together just creates like an amalgamation and like a almost indescribable feeling that you can't get from other, from like more typical structured types of music. So I think this definitely fits into that mold.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, it's a good album. I don't know if you have tops. Like I think it's kind of funny because my top 3 are Carry the Zero, The Plan, and Broken Chairs. Which Carry the Zero and The Plan were my favorites before the whole listen.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean the rest of this album is bad at all. Like this is just like,
no, not at all. Yeah,
it was just great. Like from, I would say, from Sidewalk to Broke. Like I didn't even realize. Like I didn't even have to check what song was playing. From like usually, like if a song's running too long, or I'm getting a phone call. I have to silence my phone. But anyway, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think to kind of pick up where you were, I didn't think I harped enough on the flowing seamlessly of it. I think more than probably almost every album we've talked about on the show, this is probably the quickest 47 minutes you'll have listening to an album. They've can't quite put my finger on what they've done, but they've figured out the formula to literally make a perfectly flowing track list.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's not a wasted track at all. No, it's almost like it definitely reminds me of maybe Greatest Hits by Remo Drive, where we're talking about like we have a least favorite song, but you're still going to listen to the album and not skip any tracks and just like have an absolute blast. Yeah, and this is a lot like that.
And it was kind of like, it was surprisingly upbeat too. Like even sometimes the lyrics aren't like the happiest, but it was still like, you could still like not listen to the lyrics if you don't want to, and then like have fun still. Right. Or like the lyrics and be like, well, that's kind of deep, like
kind of the polar opposite of the next thing we'll talk about, but I guess we'll get to that. But
yeah, dude. This is, I would recommend this album. This
would be one of the first things I recommend.
Genre too, right? Like I think I found that out, that it's kind of like that, like you were saying, that cult classic kind of cornerstone album of like indie people.
Right. Yeah. So I think, I was actually reading about how some people think this album was a letdown coming off of the more experimental Perfect From Now On, which is this album's predecessor from 1997. For me personally, I much prefer Keep It Like a Secret, which is what we've been talking about, obviously. Because, obviously the more poppy and catchy writing is more appealing to me, like in a rock album, especially when it doesn't take away from the indie rock instrumental elements. So like one thing about Perfect From Now On that I find a little difficult is, yes, it's got that heavy distortion and that more complex and, experimental instruments, but I prefer this just because of the flow of the tracks and the catchiness of a lot of the songs that make me want to return to it. But I could definitely understand how some people might think they were taking a step backwards, but I think it's cool that they explored what they did with Perfect From Now On and then kind of transitioned into this, where I don't think you could really say they were trying to appeal to the mainstream as much with this record. I think you could just say they, went a different direction and chose to make it a little more kind of, I don't know, a little more accessible.
Yeah, I think I think if you listen to any of Built to Spill's albums, they all you can kind of tell that they have the same creative minds at work. All the, even
Even
though
if it sounds different.
album sounds different, but you can tell it's like you can kind of see the way the writers, whoever writes the songs, how their brains work. Like they kind of have that same kind of energy that they want to put forth. So yeah, this is like more streamlined for like audiences and that kind of thing, maybe like a little less experimental, but like it still sounds like the album before this and the album that just came out last year.
They didn't abandon their identity. They
Yeah.
just made a different, I guess, type of record in the same vein of that is still their identity, which is great. I mean, we've talked a lot about on the show about artists like vastly switching up on what they're kind of known for and like trying something different, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. I think we both agree we like to see a little bit of like a development from an artist, but me personally, I don't, especially for artists I don't love seeing like a 180 flip on, kind of what they do or what they were known for. But I definitely respect, obviously the creative process and like to see artists trying something new, which I guess typically would come after the more mainstream project where Built to Spill did a little backwards. But I think either way, we're looking back on it 25 years later. And I mean, we have two great pieces of music to enjoy, so it doesn't really matter which came out first.
And they've released an album, like I think they average like an album every other year or something like that.
Yeah, they do have a bunch. Yeah, I haven't really heard of most of them, but
they have a ton of albums.
They do. I'm looking right now. They have literally a ton of albums. So might listen to some more because I do like these guys, especially
I like their newest album, and I didn't even know that they were an old band until after.
Yeah, When the Wind Forgets Your Name. Might have to check that one out.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, so I guess on that topic, highly recommend Keep It Like a Secret for any
essential
any rock fan who hasn't heard it, or really just anyone, because it's super easy to get into, I think. So
it's a fun little listen. Add a couple, you don't got to listen to every song, but just add the few that like you want to, like it's good. It's a good listen overall. I recommend it.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up for that album. So we can kind of move into our next one here.
So I gave you A Crow Looked at Me.
Yes.
By Mount Eerie. I think that's Mount Eerie, which is the lead singer of the Microphones, which you know the Microphones, right? Yeah. Microphones, kind of like that kind of experimental indie, staple. The Microphones. What's their hit album with the elephant on?
The Glow Part 2.
Glow Part 2.
Great album.
I've been recommended that album. It's everywhere. You look on Reddit. You look.
Yeah, if you're in like the indie scene or the music nerd scene,
like this album's so good.
And really, the Microphones and Mount Eerie. Phil Elverum. That's the guy behind it. Elverum.
Yep.
Everything he makes is really widely hailed. So
good. And he has another side project that's really interesting where it's more electronic.
Okay.
And I forgot what it's called, but I will I could always look that up now. But anyway, so A Crow Looked at Me is this kind of it's interestingly unique to a situation that happens in Phil Elverum's life. So this album chronicles his wife's death in 2016-17. And so it kind of starts off with, each song telling an aspect of her being alive still, her dying. And then it's kind of these aspects that he has to deal with when overcoming death and things he can't get through or says, I can't get through this yet. So
right. It's really kind of a documentation, almost a narration of his grieving process.
Yeah.
Like his day-to-day life in the aftermath of his wife's passing. I believe she was diagnosed with some kind of cancer, not sure exactly. But yeah, and they had a daughter, and just obviously a terrible terrible situation, but it's an interesting album. There's not really anything else like it, that's for sure. I mean, it's hard to, I guess, it's hard to judge an album that's clearly like it's literally like a part of the grieving process. Like he was not making this album to sell records or to get radio play or to even win awards or anything like that. It was solely made as like a personal project to probably help, him get through this process. So I mean, I would obviously rather just, talk about what makes it interesting for those reasons. Obviously, since it's a music podcast, of course, I'll touch on the music itself. It's extremely basic, which is clearly an like intentional choice to kind of like accentuate the lyricism, the storytelling, so you're not like kind of distracted or overwhelmed by, because I mean, for looking at his other work, The Glow Part 2, for example, it's very loud, very over the top, tons of stuff going on, distortion and static everywhere, where this is just very, very basic. Literally every song is just an acoustic guitar and just him talking over it. And so, because of those qualities, I wouldn't say it's a record that I really enjoyed listening to, but I don't think it's really made to be
listened to once.
No, yeah, it's not made to be really consumed as a, like a commercial record. But of course, it's very interesting, and of course, it's very important for Phil himself in this grieving process. And kind of what I thought of towards the end of the album is that this could really be kind of special for anyone else who's going through a similar experience, maybe to just have these songs that kind of describe your pain and kind of relate to what you're going through, which is, I guess I can just say I'm thankful that I couldn't relate too much to it, because I haven't really experienced something quite this, heavy. But I think it's cool that there could be someone out there who could relate to this and could maybe find a little bit of solace through this project.
Yeah, I think what's beautiful about this album is that it has the same effect of a documentary, like watching a documentary, where you sit down and it's like you're watching like global warming like documentaries, and
like something super depressing.
I'm gonna sit down and watch this thing, but then right when you see that first animal die, you're like, oh shit, I'm watching. Like, I want to know what is gonna happen. And then you watch it and you're like, oh shit, like this is crazy. And then you can remember every little aspect of that documentary, because you paid attention to it because it was shocking. And but then you don't need to listen to it again because you're like, I already know. Know.
No, totally. And you said that when you kind of assigned this one to me last week. I think it was actually live, so you could go back and hear that if you haven't. But I said something to Riley about like, oh god, I don't want to listen to the sad album, and he's like, oh, I don't have to listen to it again. I already heard it once. I already know it. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means, but now I kind of understand, because there's not really any,
like, it's guttural without any yelling. It's loud without being loud.
It's loud, but it's quiet. Like the words speak for themselves. Yeah, and I mean,
so powerful.
It's an experience for sure. I didn't note anything about any song individually, because I see it more of an experience. Like, I think it's actually a tremendous way to describe it, as like watching a documentary. It's almost like
for yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like listening to a podcast, because there is music, but every song is literally just a very basic acoustic guitar riff and just him talking over it, barely even singing. So it every song is a different memory or different experience, and it really just feels like a guy talking to you directly, barely even like using the music to make a song, more of using his songwriting and his guitar playing as an outlet to express these things that he's feeling. rather than try to create a consumable album.
It's just it's such a beautiful thing. Like it's like this, like in a fucked up way.
Yeah, no, it's
It's literally just a man. Like you can see that it's just a man trying to reach his loved one. Someone who, this isn't just someone that you love. Like this isn't this guy, like Phil Alvarum didn't just love his wife. Like this is his person. Like you could just tell by the way he talks to her through this music. It's just like he remembered all of their plans. And I think the song Seaweed is about, like, their boat and like how they wanted to, you know it's just kind of this like home that they were hoping to live in. And it's just so,
yeah. I mean, you have your whole life up to this point.
yeah,
Your whole life up to this point was like built with this person,
yeah,
and your whole plan for the rest of your life was built around this person. And now you
mhm,
kind of have to, everything is just different now that they're gone. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, he also talks about struggling to even function doing basic tasks. There's a song Toothbrush/Trash. He's talking about like he took out the trash for the first time in like months after she died, and that was significant enough to literally write a 4-minute song about it, because that's how much I that he struggled with all of these, emotions and experiences. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see this, such a just broken down guy, and hear these songs from his perspective. It's honestly amazing that he even was able to write and record these, because this seems
yeah,
like something that could have been locked in the vault forever. But I do think it shows a lot of courage and a lot of power to just put yourself all out there in the music like that,
mm,
and release it to the public for anyone to hear, and kind of just, I think that's one of the stages of grief is acceptance. I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
release of the album probably, kind of represents that he's
yeah.
accepted and is free to kind of talk about what he's going through.
Yeah, and I think what's beautiful is the songs are dated. Like, as you could tell, each song is written in order of
Right.
grieving process. So, like, I think Ravens have, like, the song Ravens have, like, him saying, like, oh, in August 2016, I, you've been dead for a month now, and I took our daughter to the forest and like all this kind of stuff. And he's like, I can't
Mm-hmm.
live in the house anymore. I have to move. Or that's in the
Yeah.
song before, but Ravens is more about like how he takes their daughter to like a forest because he's like it's beautiful and there's just movement and nothing really dies there. It's just a cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
even the logs have life on them, like moss and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of this like every song has this beautiful like observation of like someone's mind and like the grieving. Like he's still trying to take care of their daughter, but he's just like, he wants to escape. So it's like that song's more about escaping it. Like he's like he still can't get over it. Like he can't throw away, he feels horrible for giving away your clothes, let's say. But then
Right.
it's just it's so brutal. But I don't know. I think I think you have songs like, I think my favorite song is Toothbrush Trash,
That's
which
one of
is,
one of mine as well.
yeah. It's because it's that final stage. It's like the first song that really has a like acceptance in it. So it has, you know, it's it's kind of sad because the like his pictures of her, like I think that first few sentences he says like the pictures of you are replacing my memory of what I saw.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this full circle of those early songs in the album. He's like all he's seeing is his wife dying in the room and he feels horrible that she can't be here, you know. Um And it's like, but now he's realized he's remembering those little times again, like when she would sing and like, you know, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of like that idea of when you lose someone, as time goes on, you're gonna, those pictures are what you remember, right?
Right.
Sad moments of them being like sickly will fade, but along
Yeah.
with that is the good memories too.
Yeah, he says in the song that you're referring to, toothbrush slash trash, he talks about, um his mind erasing the echo of her dying in the house or something. And he does say that he's slowly replacing his memory with the photographs he has of her, which is, probably a good thing, moving towards. I think I agree with you that toothbrush slash trash is kind of a movement in the right direction of, okay, he's taken out the trash that has been sitting there since she died, and he's thinking back on the good times he has. He has these photos of her. He's kind of forgetting about how she looked in the room where she died when she was sick, and all that. So yeah, I think if I had to, since you kind of mentioned that was your favorite song, if I had to pick like one song that I would like listen to again, like would be able to enjoy kind of casually, it probably would be Ravens. I think I think you hit it perfectly. I think the sentiment of that song is beautiful, with bringing his daughter to the forest and kind of looking at all the life there and looking at the ravens there and stuff like that. I think that's one that I definitely enjoy. And I think My Chasm is also a good one that kind of describes a different, maybe more underlooked kind of part of this whole grieving process, or kind of his feelings through all of this, which is kind of the feeling of, that no one else really feels how he is feeling in this moment. Like it was his wife, she was no one else's wife. So he is really the only one who feels this unique experience for her specifically. I think in the opening lyrics, it kind of highlights that when he says, I am a container of stories about you, and I bring you up repeatedly, uninvited too. Do the people around me want to keep hearing about my dead wife, or does the room go silent when I mention you? And, that's kind of him realizing, like, she was my everything. All I have are stories of her. All I think about is her. But now for everyone else kind of looking at him, like, do they care? Like, have they moved on and he's the only one still harping on this? And that's its own struggle, separate from, of course, the grieving. Now the separate struggle is, what does everyone else think about me? And that's just a kind of an underrated layer to it.
That has a dead wife,
Right, and you don't want to be pegged as the dead wife guy. You want to move on, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it's kind of that feeling. Like I think this album really shows like that balance of like the good and the bad of like of death, like of witnessing someone close to you die, of like he in that song it's kind of like like that line you were just saying, like, oh, he wants people to forget that he's the dead wife guy, but he doesn't want people to forget his wife. Like he doesn't he wants people to remember her.
Like you want to bring up happy stories of this person who is gone, but you also don't want to make people uncomfortable by what he says, the room goes silent. You don't want to ruin other people's experience or whatever. So I think that is why he made this album, as an outlet to perhaps get it all out one final time. Not saying he's totally moved on or forgetting his wife, but just saying all of these fond memories and difficult memories of her actually dying, in the room that he describes so often. They're now out, they're on paper, and they're on wax, and they're going to exist forever. And he did that. He's gotten past the need for that. And so hopefully now he's doing better. Hopefully his daughter is doing good, and hopefully this album helped in the process of getting through that.
Yeah. And I think like he really focuses on his daughter a lot. Like I think in your songs it's very much less of like his wife and more of like thinking about his daughter. Like the last song, Crow, is more about like, you know, what are we gonna do about you? Not in a bad way, just like
right, but just like I wasn't prepared to kind of
yeah,
raise this girl alone, you know?
yeah. And it's kind of cool because like the last few lines, I'm looking at them now. It's like, sweet kid, I heard you murmur in your sleep. Crow, you said, crow. And I asked, are you dreaming about a crow? And there she was. And it was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I always thought that like it's his wife, like as a
Right. I think he sees her in a lot. Like in Toothbrush and Trash, she was taking out the trash and there was a fly in the bathroom.
yeah.
And he's like, oh, was that you? You know, that he was taking out the trash and the fly was there. But I think that's, you know, kind of interesting you point that out because like one thing that sticks out very, very clearly, I mean, we've already been talking about this album compared to Phil's other work and many other works in this genre, is that how literal the lyrics are usually. It's 99%, you know, most of the time, it's very direct, which makes it so like obviously and abundantly it's like sad, you know, in most of the like sad folk albums that we've talked about, they're very cryptic, which allows you to kind of ignore, you know, or at least look past the subject matter. Where for this album, it's very in your face, and it's almost I described it as fourth wall breaking. You know, I guess in all music you could say the artist is talking directly to you, but it doesn't really feel like this. This feels like he is sat down in front of you, talking to you specifically, which gives it that kind of creepy and uncomfortable nature, which makes it so memorable and so, I guess, tough to listen to, but just so real as well.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, like powerful. Like it's like I remember like getting recommended this album like a while ago, and I was like, it was the start of last semester, so like the fall semester. And I listened to it while I was walking to class, and I remember like literally like crying, like I was like tearing up.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is this? This is horrible. Like why would I ever listen to this while walking to class? This is
No, yeah, you need to be in the right
yeah
mindset. Yeah, but
yeah
I mean, this is one of, I mean, like, okay, this is now in 18 episodes of this show, and you know, 36 plus, probably 40 albums we've talked about. This is like the first one that I'd say like I would not recommend listening to, unless
you're ready for an experience.
Yeah, unless you're either interested in this topic, very interested in Mount Eerie / you know, Phil, or you can relate to the subject matter of this album. I think it would be very, very beautiful and powerful and helpful to someone who can relate closely to it. I think for an average casual listener, I would probably shy away. It's extremely uncomfortable and unsettling. I mean, no choruses, little to no drums or any instrument other than the acoustic guitar, monotone singing. It's like perfectly unsettling. I mean, obviously he was trying to create something very jarring and uncomfortable, and he could not have succeeded more. So if you're prepared for that and you want that, definitely this would be a great thing to check out. Yeah, if you're not really ready for that or you don't want to kind of experience that, I would definitely shy away. I don't think this album should be taken lightly, as corny as it may sound. I don't think it should be taken lightly.
You know what's funny is I would say the opposite. You should listen to this, like hands down. Like I think it's such a unique album that when you look at albums that are super unique, you think of like, oh, like Nirvana, you know, Nevermind, or you know, Beatles, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or
Yeah,
you know, like those iconic albums of
right.
like monumental movement, or like Led Zeppelin one or something like that. Kind of like I feel like this is an album that is so unique that it's like if you want a unique listen, like you think you might have to listen to some jazz or something like that, but no, this is so beautiful in a fucked up way without being like I'm not a sad music guy. Like we've reviewed like folk music and neo folk, and my freaking girlfriend was on the show a couple weeks ago, and
Yep.
I was sitting
That
there
was a
like,
good episode. Check that out.
yeah, that was a great episode 16. But I was like, I don't know, this is like, it's just not me, you know, all that kind of like super deep lyrics and that
Right.
they're all kind of like weirdly veiled and like weird, like almost fetish, whatever, fucking like obsession over like being sad. You know what I mean? It's
Sure.
like Bridgers is like, oh, I love serial killers, and then like Bright Eyes is like, I'm so sad, you know, like he's like whatever. But this album is so uniquely like actually like showing the progression of emotional like acceptance of death and sadness.
It's like a
pure, like there's no, he wrote it in saying it, but in order, like it's written in order, so it's naturally going to have that the mood that he was in at the time.
Right. It's good. It feels authentic. It's like a very real, like lifetime documentation of emotion and the emotional, I guess, process, you know?
Yeah. And I would say that's why I recommend it though. Like, it's like,
well, it's definitely I would say it's like a kind of, which I'm very glad we had it on the show, because I would say it's one of the kind of essential like musical experiences for sure. Like,
yeah,
you're not like, I haven't heard really anything like this, and I always love to, you know, seek out something that I may not have heard before. So
right.
I am very glad I got the chance to listen to it. I guess I would just maybe, rather than say not recommended, I'd say more of like listen at your own risk. Yeah, discretion advised. Yeah. It's because I guess, you know, since you brought up all those other albums we've talked about, the difference is, and I touched on this a little, but the difference is like those albums use them, like especially Bright Eyes, I'd say was a good example. You know, I'm Wide Awake It's Morning, which we just talked about last week. I think those albums kind of use the music to mask the subject matter, perhaps, you know, in a lot of cases. And this is very common practice in all music, even beyond folk and stuff that we've talked about. Like the song sounds happy, but the lyrics are sad, you know, and that kind of allows people to listen to it while being able to look past the subject matter potentially. Where this is the complete opposite, you know, quite the contrary, where the music is so stripped back and simple that you're like forced to deal with the subject matter. No matter what, you would not be able to look past what's being said here. You know, you always say how you're not really much of a lyric analysis guy. You're more of just a kind of listen and enjoy guy. But it'd be impossible to listen to this and not take away the things he's saying and feel the feelings he wants you to feel through the lyrics.
Yeah.
So it's a unique experience because of that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty cool. And I guess
it is cool too. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that there's an album that exists that we can consume that someone made to like get through the grieving process. I think that is very unique and very interesting, that like,
and it's done so well. Like, it's
that an album, it's I mean, even the most talented musician, even like I'm talking about like even the most talented indie underground, someone who doesn't care about selling records, winning awards, anything, they're making the music for the purpose of having other people listen to their music and making like a consumable album. This is the first album I think I've ever heard that I wouldn't say wasn't intended for other people to hear, but was made solely for the artist to improve their own life, which I just thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would kind of compare this musical experience of an album to John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, his standalone album Neandra de la Des, which is and usually just a t-shirt, which is this album that he made in 1994 after Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out, and where he got really addicted to heroin, and each song is recorded in his own house with just his guitar and like a microphone, and you can hear his like the crumbling of his mind due to addiction and like what it does to you, but it's so natural and guttural that like, and he's such a beautiful guitar player that it kind of is like such an interesting like experience like to listen to, because it's like nothing you would ever hear that could be planned out, or it's not, you're not singing a song about addiction where you can look back on it. This is a man literally
Very natural.
addiction, yeah, and it's like he's like destroying his brain and body and everything, and you can see it where he's like more like conscious, and then at the end it's just nonsense of him paranoid, thinking everyone's out to get him, and it's kind of like, that's why I think I was drawn to A Crow Looks at Me, because it's that natural, like, so you can know that this wasn't like planned. This is like Phil Alvarum, like feeling these feelings, and it's so just amazing. And I think like
totally.
It's such a I think it would help people. Like, I think when I listen to it, I just lost my grandma, and it was like sudden. And so I kind of had the same feelings of like, oh, I could have done more. And then it was like, but I couldn't have. It was just like that feeling of like not being there. And so it kind of helped me grieve in a way of like,
right.
Oh, it's okay to look back, but like, don't let the person's memory fade. So it's kind of like a beautiful kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that, you had that experience.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people could obviously relate to this album and have it, do something for them like that. So that's why I'm really happy it exists, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who could relate to that. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much sums it up for A Crow Looked at Me.
Yeah, and, no top songs except for, I would say,
the couple we mentioned. Yeah, but you can't just listen to a song. So like, I mean,
listen to the whole thing.
Let's set apart some time, just one sitting, listen to it.
Don't be bummed probably because you're gonna cry. Like, there's no like you're gonna get upset or bummed. It's like, it's gonna be sad. So
yeah, definitely. So I guess that
wraps it up.
That kind of does it for the albums that we planned on talking about. But we usually have more to kind of. What's that?
We have a little breakdown at the end.
Yeah. We usually kind of just talk about whatever. And I know I mentioned it last week, but American Corruption by Capital Steez is now on streaming services. So I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that.
Dude, I got halfway through it. It's fucking amazing. That first
isn't it awesome?
The Doom beat.
There's some Mad Lib beats, some Doom.
Is it? Oh, what is it? What's that beat on the first?
It's all caps, I believe. Is the first track.
And it's crazy because Steez like was so like good, and he was so like Malcolm X-y, kind of like talking about like real shit.
He's very intelligent too.
Yeah, he was like, and he was like really talking about real shit, and I think. Sadly, I think that's what ultimately led to him dying.
Yeah,
because he
almost one of those people that was too smart for their own good.
Yes,
he was like probably a chronic overthinker that was just constantly. It's a terrible situation. Rest in peace to Steez, but like he was an incredible mind and incredible musical talent, and obviously gone too soon. So.
I'll recommend that though. What is it?
Highly recommend if you are a rap fan. Yeah, American Corruption.
Yeah, didn't get a lot of hate because people are like, "Oh, it looked like a swastika or something like that."
Yeah, so his logo, the 47. So his logo is a 4, and a 7, crossing each other, and it does look vaguely similar to a swastika because the 4 and the 7 kind of do that, but you can't see what I just drew. If you're not watching on YouTube, but I just drew a 47 in the air. But I mean, obviously it has nothing to do with that.
Is he from 47th Street?
Not sure. I mean, I know he's obviously from New York. I think Brooklyn. Grew up with Joey Badass. I'm not sure exactly where he's from, and I'm not sure the significance of the 47. Although I do know that there is some significance to it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I was into all that history and
yeah, me too. But I do remember there kind of being something, knowing Steez, I'm sure it was representative of something because I don't think he really, So
you don't got to say anything else. That's I mean, I was listening to that this week. I don't know, Claro I was listening to some Sling.
I listened to Sling on my drive home for spring break when I was driving back to the Detroit area. I was riding with my buddy. It's just me and my friend John. Shout out John. And I was like, "Oh, do you have any music you want to listen to?" And he's like, "No, well, whatever you want." I'm like, I'm like, you want me to queue up anything like a playlist or anything? He's like, "No, whatever you want, man. Whatever you want." I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm sure." I'm like, "Okay."
Don't do that, dude. You're fucked.
Yeah, I mean, he knew what he was getting himself into. I mean, he knows me. We're tight. So it was the morning. The snow was on the trees. I was just really feeling the Sling kind of vibe. That's what I wanted to hear. To start my morning. So I threw on Sling, and John actually fell asleep in the passenger seat. Woke up sometime later, and he's like, "Dude, I'm sorry, I fell asleep." I'm like, "Oh, it's okay." He goes, "You were playing some fucking lullabies or something," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was just Claro."
Love me some Claro.
I listened to when he was sleeping. I listened to Sling and For Emma Forever Ago by Bon Iver. Great kind of back to back combo.
Dude, that album For Emma Forever Ago makes me tear up, dude. I'm not even.
It's beautiful.
I was already like you said for Emma Forever, and I was like, "Fucking oh, dude!"
It's beautiful. The tracks Flume and the title track, are just incredible.
And
so
like
good.
even though it's overplayed and not on that album, but Skinny Love is such a like.
It is on that album.
It is. Oh shit! Dude, it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's one of their. I think it's at their most popular song. I mean, obviously,
one of one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's a great song. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, just because a song is like super popular doesn't mean like it's.
No,
we're not like contrarians. Just because it's the artist's top song doesn't mean that I can't admit that it's a. Great song, which it is.
Skinny Love, it will always get me blaring out nonsense because I don't know the lyrics. And
no, I can never. Bon Iver is definitely one of those kind of bands where it's like I kind of just know what it sounds like. I definitely don't know the lyrics.
But it's such like a basic song too, but you appreciate it so much because it's a
it's just it has that quality to it. Where it's just
just the way his voice like perfectly sits in between like cracking and not cracking of like
it's he's always like that where he's like pushing it to the absolute limit, which I love.
But it's like that kind of like he's not blasting his voice this like wrenching almost like like you clench your like body and like sing, and it's like so good.
Yeah,
love Bon Iver.
Me too.
Yeah, that album, I'm gonna save that because I'm gonna listen to that later tonight.
I've heard a few of their albums and I like them all, but I've heard their first three. I haven't heard the most recent. But something about For Emma Forever Ago though really just draws me back compared to the other ones that I've heard.
So. Yeah, well, it's cool because like it's so interesting because they like hit they're kind of like post like mid 2000s as well. Like they're kind of like because 2008 that album came out, so they're almost like they're still technically a newer band, like in a way, because like you think of like folk albums that came out like in pre 2005,
like the early 2000s,
different from albums that were released 2007, 2008,
and the early 2010s. So they kind of are you saying they kind of are between eras?
Yeah. Oh, and I think that benefits them too because you have people like me and you who are younger listening to these albums because we found them now as like adults or
Right. I
whatever.
mean, like, yeah, I was
Teenagers.
like 5 when it came out, but I can look back and
Yeah.
right.
But the thing, you're right. But then, it may be a little past the taste of like people that are the next generation above us listening to music that like Fall Out Boy or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. That's something I don't never really think about, but that you always like to bring up, which I think is interesting, is like kind of the sequence and the evolution of, music and how it's
Oh, it's the
changed and
way I
stuff.
think, dude. It's just
Yeah.
who inspired who. Why did this person make
Yeah,
this?
no, and I'm interested in that too. We've had this exact conversation before where like Apple Music has the inspired by playlist,
And
so
I
you
think
can
that's
go
why I
to an
like to bring it
artist.
up, because you always bring up the inspired by, and I'm like,
Yeah, and I I,
I
I
know,
like looking into that. I
yeah,
do.
I just like naturally hear like
Right. I mean, you have a lot of like musical knowledge, which is awesome.
yeah, I consume different music. Well, and it's so funny because like I can never explain like what bands I've ever listened to because I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of like every band. I feel like any band, I'm like either like heard of them or listened to a few songs. But
Yeah.
then like when someone's like, oh, you should listen to this album, and then I'm like, man, this is horrible. Why did I say ever like this one song does not explain like a whole album sometimes. Like
Right.
I've heard of Bright Eyes before and I listened to like a Bright Eyes song. But then when I had to listen to the whole album, that whole Bright Eyes album, I was like, oh, I can't do this. I felt
Yeah.
horrible for being like, oh yeah, I know Bright Eyes, like whatever else.
Right. Because yeah, and
It's so
I think we
funny,
all do the same thing.
yeah,
There's, I mean, oftentimes when we're kind of doing this, we just talk about whatever we want to talk about,
yeah,
and you say all these bands that you listen to. I'm like, yeah, I mean, like I've heard of them, but like I'm not like familiar,
right,
So
exactly, yeah.
yeah,
But
but yeah,
Bon Iver is a band that I fucking love.
yeah,
So
Bon Iver is incredible. So
yeah, dude. I'm gonna get a Bon Iver poster. All right, up on my ceiling.
yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah.
I also so kind of over spring break, I guess what I was so that was my drive down. Over spring break, Kenny Mason dropped a new EP, which actually I guess I don't know if you're ready for this segment of the show, but I know what I'm going to give you for next week.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, yeah. So speaking of Kenny Mason, I guess I know you mentioned you haven't heard a full album by him, but I do think you would like him. So I'm going to give you his first album, which is Angelic Hoodrat.
I've heard some of it, but never.
Yeah, right. Like I'm sure you've heard a couple tracks, but it's like 14 tracks. Very, very interesting kind of amalgamation of genres, and I think it's probably something that you probably wouldn't get around to listening to by yourself. So I kind of want to give you the opportunity to hear it. And I think
definitely an album that it's like a force, kind of like I gotta listen to this now.
Yeah, but I think when it's all said and done, I think you'll come away probably with some tracks that you like. Good. Yeah,
right. It's gonna probably be one of those albums where I'm like, yeah, it's not bad at all. It's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I hope so at least. So yeah, that's gonna be mine.
Give you.
This is always tough. I know.
Because I just got into Alex G. Do you know Alex G?
I do know Alex G. Yeah, I've listened to I've listened to his newest album, and I have to look at the covers because I'm not really familiar.
The one with the dog running down the aisle.
No, that's like his most popular one though, right?
Yeah, have you listened to that album?
No, I've listened to his recent stuff. That's
okay.
Like
that's I mean, essential. I think the song "Mary" is blowing up on TikTok.
Okay, yeah.
But
no, yeah, I know this guy is pretty popular
because I'm getting into it right now and I'm really diving into it. So I think it'd be a good topical.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, kind of almost like how I picked for this week. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Alex G was like something for me that was like, all like the weird people listen to Alex G in my head.
Which is why I checked it out because I want to like not be one of those weird people, but have the same music taste as them. So
yeah. Well, and it's kind of one of those things of like anybody that talked to Alex G was like really gatekeeped him too. So I mean, like in high school, at least everybody that I knew in high school that listened to Alex G really gatekeeped that shit and was like really pretentious about it. So I thought I was like, I'm not gonna listen to that shit. They're all those fucking weirdos that like gatekeep their music. Listen to that, and then my girlfriend loves Alex G, and then she's like, oh, you should really give it a chance. I think you would really like it.
Yeah.
And I've listened to Mary, which is on TikTok and stuff. So you hear like the ending part. But then I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Like, this is like, Like it's like really cool. So
I had a similar experience to that when I knew he was kind of one of those like nerd kind of male manipulator artists, and
yeah.
When he dropped his new album in 2022, I saw all those people talking about it. I'm like, okay, I should stop avoiding this guy. Like, I want to kind of get into this, you know. But have you heard his 2022 album?
Yeah, I listened to some of it.
Honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't like it at all. Really, I mean, there's a couple songs.
I think it turned me off to him.
It turned me off to him too, and that's why I haven't really gone deeper into him. But
Trick is his like magnum opus,
which is what I knew that when you said the dog running down the aisle, that clicked. So yeah, I'm excited to hopefully change my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a character that I'm interested in because I hear stories about him from people, because I love listening to like music nerds that really love the artist. Like my girlfriend's one of those people of like
who like loves the person,
doesn't just love the music, she loves the people that do it. Like she loves Alex G to the point where like she knows stories that she's like heard on, like she watched videos on YouTube about Alex G.
Right, that's not really me. Probably only for like a couple people at most.
Right, but it's cool to like know someone like that. Like I do that with certain bands. Like
it's like personal, you know. Like my absolute favorite artist, I could say that about. So yeah.
Who?
Cole. Who?
Yeah, JID.
Yeah, those two for sure. Probably Claro also.
Claro.
Yeah, and then I mean, outside of that, like
Kenny Mason.
No, not really. He's a more
Airplane Over the Sea.
Jeff Magnum. I do know a lot about him just from
stories. You're always like, man, have you heard about this?
I know a lot about him just purely off of research of like
Reddit.
I am very interested in him as a person.
You're on the Neutral Milk Hotel Reddit, aren't you? Like the top like admin?
No, I'm not. I'm not on Reddit at all. So
that's a lie. You downloaded the EP off of the Reddit.
Yeah. I mean, I can physically go on the website just like anyone can. I don't scroll on it frequently.
I love Reddit. I use Reddit all the time. I don't like the people on Reddit. Sorry, Reddit people, but
yeah, I mean, obviously,
I'm kind of like get a little social anxiety on Reddit, and it's on a computer with no faces. And
yeah, I mean, you can definitely get singled out on Reddit. But changing the subject quickly before we sign off, I have a question for you. Unrelated to potentially a future album. Have you heard Nostalgia Ultra by Frank Ocean?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Because that's going back to saying what I was been listening to over spring break. That was like, I just was looking at my library, saw it, listened to it, and just got reminded by how awesome that album is. I mean, obviously I know it's super old and like everyone knows, but like I'm just making sure that everyone knows just to make sure.
I'm really rocking out to like Cream. Like I love Cream. Like, I think like I really got into their first couple albums, like their first 3 albums, which they only have 4, but their first 3 albums are fucking one of the best trio albums of all time. Like it's just so good. Their progression of music style, how they, were sick of each other and like all this kind of stuff, but then they rock out, and I don't know, their covers are amazing. Like they do so covers, and because they're all blues inspired British guys, like they're inspired by like Mississippi blues, but then they're from Britain, and then they've inspired so much rock, and like it's crazy. It's just like such great stuff, and there's some great lines in their songs that I just get stuck in your head, and I love it.
That's cool.
Eric Clapton's the guitarist, so you can't really go wrong. He's one of the greatest of all time. So
yeah, I think there's one, if not more, J. Cole lyrics about Eric Clapton.
Yeah, he's amazing. So, yeah, dude.
Yeah. Anything else, or are we kind of signing off?
I'll give a little rundown. I'll be like, all right, everybody. Stay positive. Stay happy. We're hitting a point in the year where it's going to get a little warmer, a little brighter, a little happier.
For sure.
Seek self-help if you ever need it. I recently did that with therapy and that kind of thing. And the days getting longer definitely help with that feeling of like, oh great, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get happier and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to say that like, like love people no matter what. Like I think we always, you may have preconceptions about people like that you don't understand. Let's say, this could be anything. You could literally pick anything like, oh, that guy murdered someone or whatever. I know that's dramatic, but like if you just understand someone's perspective and kind of get along with them, you'll be way happier in life because then you won't have that stress upon you. You'll be overall a good person. And yeah, I think the world would be a little better if we just kind of understood each other, like others' perspectives, and just accepted, within reason, everybody, and kind of just work together. But that's a utopia and theoretically impossible. So
Yeah. Well,
just be good to everybody. Listen to some good music,
always.
Just hang out. Like go hang out with your friends because life is short, dude. Like, but yet it could feel so long at times. So those moments where it feels long, like make those moments where time
Yeah,
goes
dude.
forever.
You know what I always say? I might have said it before. The days are short, but the years fly by. So
yeah,
make the most of it. Yeah. Enjoy some sunlight. Now with daylight saving time, we get some sunlight. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, well said as always.
Thanks,
And
guys.
yeah, thank you for listening.
We appreciate it.
Follow the pod on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the ticker scrolling across right there. It's Classic Mix Up Pod on Twitter.
Yep.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts,
Wherever,
Amazon, bunch of stuff. Yeah, thanks for being along for the ride, listening all the way through if you made it this far. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next week.
See you guys. Thanks.